We, the members of Group 13, are presenting you our work on Sustainable Development Goal 13, which is climate action, a burning issue in today's world. Before discussing about solutions to meeting targets of SDG 13, we would like to brief you a bit about weather, climate change, and other topics necessary for understanding our solutions. Now let us discuss what is SDG. In September 2015, the UN Sustainable Development Summit adopted a plan for achieving a better future, establishing the 2030 agenda that builds on the success of the Millennium Development Goals. At the heart of Agenda 2030 are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals with 169 targets, which are a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. Let us have a chit chat on weather and climate. Do you know what is the difference between weather and climate? Generally, weather refers to the state of the atmosphere, such as how hot or cold it is, while climate refers to the averaging of atmospheric conditions over long periods of time. Now, weather contrasting climate. The climate, in a wide sense, refers to the state of the Earth's climate system, which includes ocean, land, and ice. Climate refers to a region's long term weather trend, which is usually over 30 years. Now, we'll discuss about periodic climate upheavals. Periodic climate upheavals have occurred on Earth in the past, including four major ice ages: the glacial period, in which snow and ice enhance the surface albedo and sustain a cooler atmosphere, and the intergalactic eras, which are warmer than normal. Increased greenhouse gas emissions caused by volcanic activity can raise the global temperature and trigger an intergalactic phase. Now, let us discuss about causes of climate change. Climate change is mainly triggered by the emission of greenhouse gases. If we see the history of Earth, there has been a huge leap in the level of atmospheric carbon dioxide in the past 2 million years, because if we take a rough estimate on the level of CO2 in the last few decades, then in between 20th to 21st century, the level of CO2 has risen by at least 40%. Human activities such as burning of fossil fuels, clearing of forests for agricultural lands, forest fires, etc., contribute a large portion of CO2 emissions. There are also natural causes of climate change such as Milankovitch cycles, El Nino, Southern Oscillation, also called ENSO, solar irradiance, volcanic eruptions. And humans are responsible for climate change, because if we take a large scientific consensus, then we arrive in this view. Climate disruptions affecting environment are change in hydrological cycle, warming of the land, water and air, melting of polar ice and glaciers, frequent cyclones and tornadoes, floods, etc. Impacts of climate change. Climate change changes the seasonality of the planet, causing many impacts such as drought and famine, unavailability of drinking water, food insecurity, etc. Effects of climate change on the planet. Figures shows that climate has been warming since the Industrial Revolution, and this increase of temperature leads to more frequent and intense drought, storm, heat waves, rising sea levels, melting glaciers, and warming oceans. Now we'll discuss about IPCC, which stands for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It is important to discuss and mention about this body, because it is due to the existence of this body that we are able to monitor climate change and devise policies for it. The IPCC is the United Nations body responsible for assessing science related to climate change and advancing scientific knowledge on human-induced climate change. Now let us discuss about the working style of IPCC. IPCC does not conduct original research nor monitors climate change. Instead, it undertakes a periodic, systematic review of all relevant published literature, which is done by experts who volunteer to assess relevant scientific papers. Now we will discuss about the global targets set by IPCC, and which are also the sub-goals adopted for SDG 13. The first one is strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards and natural disasters in all countries. Integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies, and planning. Improve education, awareness raising, and human and institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning. Implement the commitment taken by developed country parties to UNFCCC. Promote mechanisms for raising capacity for effective climate change related planning and management in least developed countries and small island developing states, including focusing on women, youth, and local and marginalized communities. acknowledging that the UNFCCC is the primary international intergovernmental forum for negotiating the global response to climate change. It will state India's commitments and plans to combat climate change, which India declared in COP26. India will get its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. India will meet 50% of its energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. India will reduce the total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons from now onwards till 2030. By 2030, India will reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by less than 45%. So, by the year 2070, India targets to achieve net zero emissions. I will discuss some of the current schemes to achieve the declared targets. National Solar Mission, National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency, National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, National Water Mission, National Mission for Sustainable Himalayan Ecosystem, Green India Mission, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. Now we will discuss about solutions to the three main targets of SDG 13 to be implemented in Sundargarh district. Target 13.1: Strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate related disasters. This target aims at improving the adaptive capacity to climate related disasters and helps in bringing back the conditions to normal state at the earliest. We would like to mention that Government of Odisha is one of the best governments when it comes to the implementation of this target, and it has already done a lot of work. So we are just modifying and stating their policies here because they have proved to be successful. Solutions: functional distribution of work with a proper disaster reduction strategy, which includes transportation stream, stock and stored steam, finance team, information and office documentation team, food and other relief items teams, law and order team, etc. Multi-hazard disaster management plan helps the district administration in effectively managing any disaster that is likely to be faced by the district of Sundargarh. Precise actions, procedures, and responsibilities have to be laid down well in advance in order to ensure timely response in case of any disaster. To reduce sustainably the disaster risk of this multi-disaster prone district of Sundargarh, to minimize the loss of life, property, and livelihood during and after any disaster, with proper plan to identify all common elements and implement them mainly in vulnerable and remote areas. Some of things which can be done once the disaster hits is that timely preparedness and dissemination of warnings, carrying out search and rescue evacuation operations, shelters to victims, protection to livestock, carry out emergency relief operation, setting up control room and ensuring round the clock functioning, arrangement of medical help for the rescued, check up availability of food, and also airdropping and construct suitable airdropping zones. Now we will talk about Target 13.2, which is integrate climate change measures into policy and planning. This target aims to assist the government in establishing and expanding policies, institutions, capacities, and expertise for integrated green, low carbon, climate resilient development, including funding mechanisms integrated into national adaptation plans. We can apply the following steps to Sundargarh district to meet this target. First is implementation of tradable pollution permit in industrial sector of Sundargarh. This can be implemented in the following steps. Estimation of greenhouse gases emissions in a year by the district and state administration. Deciding the units for amount of emission. Auctioning them among companies. Buying of units at higher price from the old industries by industries set up after auction. Old industries getting more money in this way by reducing their emission. In this way, all the industries will follow the example and the emissions would be reduced. Important point is that monitoring system should be standardized and uniform. The second solution is implementation of piggyback taxes to appropriately compensate affected population. A piggyback tax is a tax levied on a market activity that generates externalities on the society. If the externality is negative, then tax equivalent to the damage caused is levied on the concerned individual or the organization, whereas if it is positive, then the concerned individual or organization is incentivized. In this way, the government tries to bring about socially desirable and environment friendly practices in the society. Now, the steps to implement it in Sundargarh district. In this case, the externality is the hazards caused by emissions of greenhouse gases, which is a negative externality. Industry should be taxed to generate the compensation for the people. Also note that here it will not be justifiable to impose a uniform tax on all the industries since every industry does not produce the same amount of emissions. Now we will calculate the marginal damage according to the Pigue's rule. First, divide the marginal damage equally among all violating parties. Industries who are exceeding the limit by a very small amount can decrease it below optimum quickly as compared to those who are exceeding it by a large amount. The next time these industries generating a lot of excess emission would have to pay large fines as the total amount will be distributed in a small number of industries. Now, this will lead to small amount of emissions by everyone. And to encourage this, government can give an incentive appropriately to industries who emit less than the optimum level. Now, the third solution is provision of incentives to industries for opening R&D sector dedicated to eco-friendly technology by district mineral fund. First of all these industries would be advised to come up with their R&D sector on their own money. Then after reviewing their work for 6 months, they would be granted incentives by the DMF if their work is satisfactory. They would also be provided with advice from experts of the concerned fields. Talks can be arranged by the district administration. Discuss about target 13.3, which is build knowledge and capacity to meet climate change. This target aims at improving education, awareness raising, and human and institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning. The silent solutions of this target are improve education. Here, we should make the attainment of worldwide universal education an urgent priority because education is one of the most potent tools to combat any global crisis. The students in every school in Sundargarh should get a chance to receive the education so that they will learn the reality of climate change and help to combat the worst crisis in climate change by bringing different alternatives to innovation. Strengthen education in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics because in training in these disciplines will enable young people to better understand the physical changes in their environment and provide them with the tools with which to combat climate change. Support the delivery of environmental education in schools. Whether as a separate subject or as a transversal theme in the school curriculum, it is essential to cultivate environmental values and knowledge among young people so that they can lead more sustainable lives. Teaching environment awareness in schools. How can schools teach environmental awareness? Schools must lead the conversation. Environmental awareness should be a part of the curriculum in all schools. This will encourage young people to engage in their environment to protect it and can help communities become more environmentally aware. Some practical tips schools can adopt are introduce the 3 R's reduce, waste, reuse resources, and recycle materials. Organize tree planting days at school and tell them why trees are important to the environment. Ensure taps are closed properly after you have used them and use water sparingly. Playing the part. The only way to make the world a better place is by placing our rules. No matter how skilled you are at convincing people, if anyone does not want to change the wrongdoings he has done himself, he'll not have the chance of saving the environment. It is necessary to find out how the people can play their parts for a better future. For example, if someone has a company, he has to contact industrial recycling services to recycle all the products used more than once. Campaigns on social medias can be another potent tools. Meeting with government officials. We have to agree that governments worldwide have the proper authority to bring about positive change. However, the problem is that most government officials are caught up with building things instead of analyzing what we have done in the past. And another important component is holding peaceful protests. Here, the people of Sundargarh have the right to hold peaceful protests regarding climate change as they have faced the severe impact due to the poor environment where they are residing.